Hello people, it is CR here, and today we are going to be reading chapter 3. I'm sorry for the delay, I was busy and I had to take care of some stuff. But let's just get this over with, shall we? Chapter 3. As Cassidy was taking Chris to the principal's office, she couldn't help but wonder why an Afton kid, a son of a literal multi-company millionaire, is here at a school for regular kids. Shouldn't he be in a private school with his siblings? Cassie shook her head and continued to walk down to the hallway. So, your name is Cassidy, right? Asked Chris. Cassie stopped for a moment before turning to look at him. Her expression was cold and intimidating. Yes, my name is Cassidy. I literally introduced myself to you, she said coldly. Chris stared at her nervously before saying, Yeah, I know, but I have a question to ask, he said curiously. Cassidy raised an eyebrow before saying, What's your question? She asked. Chris took a deep breath before asking, What happened to your eye? He said while pointing at her scar that was on her right eye. Cassidy's eyes darkened slightly at the question, but she replied with, I had an accident a year ago. It's not a big deal, she said, trying to avoid any more questions that might come. Chris was curious as to what happened and decided to push further. How did the accident happen? Did someone give you that scar? He said while stepping closer. Cassidy was starting to get annoyed by the constant questioning and finally said, My father. He's the one who gave me the scar, she said while looking away from him. Chris's eyes widened slightly and decided to ask one more question. Can I ask one more question? Cassidy sighed before saying, What is it? Chris thought for a moment before asking, Why do you guys have to see if I'm committed into joining your team? Cassie looked at him for a moment before saying, Because we need to know if you're tough enough to handle what challenges we might give you. But it seems like you're not the type of guy to handle that much pain, she said while looking him up and down. Chris looked embarrassed for a moment before saying, I can handle the challenges you guys give me. I'm not scared, he said with determination. Cassidy chuckled and said, Really now? Chris nodded again, determined to prove that he was worthy enough to join their team. Cassidy sighed and said, If you're really committed to joining us, then you'll prove it by showing us after school. And if you fail, then you're out, she said, her voice turning cold again. Chris looked a bit unsure, but if he really wanted to join their team, he'd had to put in enough effort to be worthy. I'll prove it, I swear, he said while looking at her directly in the eyes. Cassidy smirked and began walking again. Then we'll see about that, Mr. Tough Guy. Chris followed her closely, waiting for his time to come and prove that he was worthy. A few minutes later, Cassidy and Chris finally reached the principal's office. Chris felt a little nervous, but Cassidy just wanted to get this over with. As they opened the door, they were greeted by files and other paperwork equipment. Cassidy grabbed Chris's hand and pulled him inside. Chris looked around the office, feeling a bit tense as they walked further in. Soon, they reached a door that read, Main Office. Cassidy opened the door, revealing their principal sitting at his desk, looking through files and other sorts of paperwork. Mr. Bryan? Cassidy called out. Mr. Bryan looked up from his paperwork with a stern expression on his face. Miss Brooks and Mr. Afton, what can I do for you? He said while adjusting his glasses. Cassidy took a step forward and said, I'm here to collect Christopher's schedule. Mr. Bryan picked up a file from his desk and pulled out a piece of paper and handed it to her. Here, give him a tour around the school and show him where his first class will be, he said while looking back at his paperwork. Thank you, sir, she said while grabbing Chris's hand again. You're welcome. And Cassidy, he called out to her. Cassidy turned around to look at him. Yes? Mr. Bryan looked at her and said, Try to be patient with this one, he said while looking back down at his work. Cassie's eyes softened a bit, and then she nodded, leading Chris out of the office and started to head towards their first stop. This is the end of chapter 3. I will be working on chapter 4 very soon, but it might take some time. So please be patient and wait. So I will see you guys next time. Thank you and goodbye.